Transit prices are on the rise again. Off-island commuters from both Laval and the South Shore once paid $3.50 to get to the island of Montreal, but they'll now be paying $5.25 as of July 1st. I'm outside of Peel Metro Station, one of the 7 downtown stations that the city decided to provide for free on weekends. But was this the best station to choose?
I mean, if you were to just look at where, Montrealers actually go, I feel there's been a fair bit of traffic heading out of the downtown. Montreal, especially the nightlife component of it, was a lot more downtown focused. But over the course of the last 2 decades, there's been a lot of really important growth in all kinds of places that are not downtown. If you were to ask me where I might want to go to have a night on the town, downtown's not at the top of my list.
Opus cards also faced hikes. The past was once $90.50 a month, but now stands at $94. Students will still have a cheaper fare, but what was once $212 for 4 months is now $220.
With higher fares, this could encourage people to use cars instead of transit, a move which could increase emissions at a time when anything but drastic cuts means global climate disaster.
So what promises did Projet Montreal make during their 2017 campaign? Montreal Mayor Valerie Plante promised metro expansions, adding 300 new buses to the STM network and making all public buses fully electric by 2025. They also promised free transit for seniors and children under 12, and that low-income riders would be able to receive 40% off monthly passes. So how well has Projet Montreal done on delivering these promises?
Honestly, if they manage to do half of them, it will be a win for them. I don't believe they will do more on those big promises than what they promises, because those are hard promise to do. You have to secure funding from different government. You have to do consultation with the population.
Without even getting into the expansion of the metro, Montreal already has an excellent public transit system, right? Without even talking about the REM or any of the future projects, Montreal already has an excellent public transit system. And the backbone of that system isn't even the metro, it's buses. Okay, buses are what get people, get a lot of people to the metro. Buses actually do an incredible amount of the heavy lifting in Montreal. The combination of the bus and the metro is what allows, such a large majority of the 2 million people who live on the island to get around without using a car. And in most of North America, that is simply not possible. We also have a fairly inexpensive system, all things considered. It is heavily subsidized by the provincial government, but of course there are huge benefits, namely the fact that a lot of people do not have to use cars to get around.
But has Projet Montreal failed the working class? With rents steeply rising, many Montrealers are being forced off the island and into the suburbs. And with fares raising in both Laval and the South Shore for commuters coming on the island, they will be hit the hardest. Montreal Mayor Valerie Plante impressed voters with her infamous Pink Line, which would run from a station in the northeast to a station in the southwest. But this seems to be a faint memory in the party's 2017 promise. The extension of the Blue Line will happen, but its opening has been delayed until 2029. But is building new metro stations and lines the best use of the city's money?
Valerie Plante got elected by literally drawing a pink line on a metro map and saying, I'm going to do this. Almost as soon as she was elected, she said, guess what? I'm not going to do this. And we still re-elected her. The way the original metro was built, they built it cheaply. I'll rephrase. They built it inexpensively, and they did so by literally just digging up the street, burying a tunnel, and then paving it over again. That's how you build inexpensive metro tunnels. That is not how they're planning on building the Blue Line, because again, the point isn't about making cost-efficient public transit improvements. It's about spending as much money as you possibly can to demonstrate to the electorate that you're serious about spending their money on, big ticket infrastructure items.
The Réseau Express Métropolitain, also known as the REM, has been a contentious issue.
The REM will feature 26 universally accessible stations spread out across the island of Montreal and both the north and south shores.
Another delay was announced with the REM, as most of the stations will not open before the end of 2024.
There's a lot of critique on the REM, on how it's an ugly project, a noisy project. It takes a lot of space. We should do everything to make it the better project possible. But we also have to think that and work with what we have now. And what we have now is a CAC government, a more right-wing government who is more on the privatization on public transit and spending the less money on it. So when they actually want to do a project, we should take it because, as I said before, the climate crisis is here, and so maybe with another government we could have different project that maybe will be better, but we might not have the time to wait for that.
The biggest scam in Montreal right now has got to be the REM. $600 million is going to be spent to connect the REM to the airport. Huge waste of money. That's like 600 brand new electric buses right there. The REM, in order for it to work, the financial backers of the REM, the CDPQ or CDPQ Infra, they demanded that they would make a 10% annual return on their investment. Okay, and this goes back a few years, but they demanded a 10% annual ROI. So that means that if there are an insufficient number of people using the REM, which I'm not sure if they've even come to a conclusion about, whether that's going to be part of the ARTM fare structure or whether it'll be something completely distinct. The point is, if they don't make their money every year, that 10% ROI or the difference of the 10% ROI gets kicked up to the provincial and federal government, which has agreed to share and split that cost. So that's a peculiar kind of arrangement for what's ostensibly a public transit system.
Transit isn't only a municipal matter, as the city both relies on funding from the federal and provincial government.
Nobody's really listening to the transit planners, the urban planners, traffic engineers, any of the experts really who've got some very important things to say about this, who are all essentially saying use public transit primarily as a means to get cars off the street. A massive expansion of public transit is really the only solution to all of those problems at the same time. And nobody in government really seems to understand this. In Montreal, we have a particular problem in that we get a lot of funding from the provincial government, and the provincial government is not located in Montreal, but rather is 2.5 hours up the north shore of the St. Lawrence in a separate city called Quebec City. Having a bunch of people in Quebec City, which is not Montreal, deciding all of our transit planning is a really bad idea, and it's not helpful. And this is how you get into situations like the Blue Line extension, which has been on the books for like 40 years, and it kind of makes less sense now than it did 40 years ago, even though we need more transit. Right now, the priority should probably not even be on metro expansion, even though I'm in favor of metro expansion generally speaking. If the whole point is to get people out of their cars and into public transit and make sure that we're reducing greenhouse gas emissions in our city, we should be investing in buses. Electric buses, they're like $1 million a pop. They're built in Saint Eustache. That's the way to go. And if we're going to commit $6 billion on a metro system, on an expansion of a metro system by only a few stations, you can imagine that would pay for 6,000 electric buses? That would be a major improvement to transit. It would benefit working people as much as it would benefit the environment. But again, the priorities are all out of whack. For Quebec City, the interest is to have these major infrastructure projects that cost a lot of money so they can show to people, hey, look at the investment we're making.
But should transit be free?
For the election, they're bringing us a $5 check for almost every single Quebecer. This is not like the most efficient measure to help lower income folks. So all this money could have been used to actually make public transit free, at least for 1 year. It could have been a 1 year thing if you wanted. It really would have helped lower income folks. So let's take for instance a person who have a monthly fee, a monthly pass every month. It would have saved $1,000 almost for years, and so it's much more than the 500 that the government brings them. So it's much more progressive as a measure, because it really helps lower income folks who really depends on public transit, and it also helps other people who don't actually use transit now to think about it. If all public transit is free in the Montreal region and everywhere in Quebec, you can just try it. If the service is free, much more people would try it.
We are really locked into this kind of ridiculous neoliberal thinking that suggests that anything free isn't worth it. A great way to save money in Montreal, or rather to rededicate funding that's being wasted, in my opinion, to transit purposes, get rid of the STM police, right? Just send in regular cops into the metro to keep an eye on things, give them absolutely no power whatsoever to check for tickets because it's free, get rid of all of the people who have to man the turnstiles, who have to take care of the whole infrastructure of buying and selling tickets. Get rid of all of that. Rededicate all of those millions upon millions upon millions of dollars to improving service for the user. Free public transit guarantees that more people will use transit because it's free.
What do you think of Montreal's transit system? Let us know below in the comments.